Lao Tzu's Tao Te Ching. The way that becomes a way is not the immortal way. The name that becomes a name is not the immortal name. No name is the maiden of heaven and earth. Name is the mother of all things. Thus in innocence we see the beginning, in passion we see the end. Two different names for one and the same. The one we call dark, the dark beyond dark, the door to all beginnings. Tu Wei says Tao originally meant moon. The I Ching stresses the bright moon, while Lao Tzu stresses the dark moon. Confucius says the Tao is what we can never leave. What we can leave isn't the Tao. Hao Sheng Kung says what we call a way is a moral or political code, which the immortal way takes care of, the spirit without effort. It brings peace to the world without struggle. It conceals its light and hides its tracks and can't be called a way. As for the immortal name, it's like a pearl inside an oyster, a piece of jade inside a rock, shiny on the inside, dull on the outside. Chiang Chu says sages don't reveal the way because they keep it secret, but because it can't be revealed. Thus, their words are like footsteps that leave no tracks. Li Si Chai says things change, but not the Tao. The Tao is immortal. It arrives without moving and comes without being called. Su Chie says the ways of kindness and justice change, but not the way of the Tao. No name is its body. Name is its function. Sages embody the Tao and use it in the world, but while entering the myriad states of being, they remain in non-being. Wang Pi says, from the infinitesimal, all things develop, but nothing, all things are born. From nothing, all things are born. When we are free of desire, we can see the infinitesimal where that things begin. When we are subject to desire, we can see where things end. Tu refers to maiden and mother. Xiao Chao Chung says Tu refers to innocence and passion, or in other words, stillness and movement. Stillness corresponds to non-existence. Movement corresponds to existence. Provisionally different, they are ultimately the same, both meet in darkness. The Shu Wen says, Swan dark means black with a dot of red in it. This is how the darker half of the yin and yang symbol was traditionally represented in Shanxi province, where the Tao Ching was first written. Doors were until recently painted black with a thin line of red trim, and every road begins with a door. Te Ching says Lao Tzu's philosophy is all here. The remaining 5,000 words only expand on this first verse. During Lao Tzu's day, philosophers were concerned with the correspondence or lack of it between name and reality. The things we distinguish as real change, while their names do not. How then can reality be known through names? In lines 2 and 4, I've used the Ma Wan Dui, Hang immortal, over the standard Chiang eternal, which was introduced to avoid an emperor's personal name. Hang also means crescent moon, a not accidental usage in light of Lao Tzu's emphasis on lunar images when talking about the Tao. Arriving 1070 AD, Sukuma Kuang and Wang Anshi punctuated lines 5 through 8 in a way that made their subject Wu non-being and Yu being. Non-being is the name, the maiden of heaven and earth, being is the name of the mother of all things, and so on. However, the grammatical particles in the Ma Wang Tuai texts make such a reading impossible. In line 5, shi normally means beginning, but China's earliest dictionary, the Shuan, says she means a virgin. Ma Sun Lun suggests she in this case might also be a loan word for the nearly identical ti, while ti normally means fetus. The Shuan says it means a woman in her 3rd month of pregnancy. Note too that a woman did not receive her public name until after marriage. In lines 7 and 13, most editions have Miao, mysterious, but according to P. Yuan, in ancient times there was no Miao, mysterious, only Miao, small beginning, which is what we find in the Mawangwai texts. This verse is not present in the Quotient texts. All the world knows beauty, but if that becomes beautiful, this becomes ugly. All the world knows good, but if that becomes good, this becomes bad. Have and have not create each other. Hard and easy produce each other. Long and short shape each other. High and low complete each other. Note and noise accompany each other. First and last follow each other. Sages, therefore, perform effortless deeds and teach wordless lessons. They don't look after all the things that arise or depend on them as they develop or claim them when they reach perfection, and because they don't claim them, they are never without them. Lu Sheng says, what we call beautiful or ugly depends on our feelings. Nothing is necessarily beautiful or ugly until feelings make it so, but while feelings differ, they all come from our nature, and we all have the same nature. Hence sages transform their feelings and return to their nature, and thus become one again. Wu Qiang says the existence of things, the difficulty of affairs, the size of forms, the magnitude of power, the pitch and clarity of sound, the sequence of position, and all involve contrasting pairs. When one is present, both are present. When one is absent, both are absent. Lu Huaichang says, these 6 pairs all depend on time and occasion. None of them is eternal. Sages, however, act according to the immortal Tao. Hence, they act without effort, and because they teach according to the immortal name, they teach without words. Beautiful and ugly, good and bad don't enter their minds. Wang Wuchu says, sages are not interested in deeds or words. They simply follow the natural pattern of things. Things rise, develop, and reach perfection. This is their order. Wang Anshi says, sages create but do not possess what they create. They act but do not depend on what they do. They succeed but do not claim success. They all result from selflessness. Because sages are selfless, they do not lose themselves. Because they do not lose themselves, they do not lose others. Su Chai says, losing something is the result of possessing something. How can people lose what they don't possess? Li Si Chai says Lao Tzu's 5,000-word text clarifies that what is mysterious as well as what is obvious. It can be used to attain the Tao, to order a country, or to cultivate the body. Ho Sheng Kung titles this verse Cultivating the Body. Song Chang Sing says, those who practice the way put an end to distinctions, get rid of name and form, and make of themselves a home for the way and virtue. I have used the wording of the Mawang Tuai and quotient text for lines 7 through 12, but have omitted the Mawang Tuai insertion of hang is endless after line 12. In line 15, I have followed the quotient wording s, look after, in place of the usual she, begin. Between lines 15 and 16, neither the Mawang Tuai nor quotient copies include line sheng puyi, or progress, or possess what they beget, which appears in the Wang Pi and Fu Yi editions, and which was apparently interpolated from a similar sequence that appears in verse 51. The last 2 lines also appear in verse 77. Bestowing no honors. Keep people from fighting, prizing no treasures. Keep people from stealing, displaying no attractions. Keep people from making trouble. Thus the rule of the sage empties the mind but fills the stomach, weakens the will but strengthens the bones. By keeping the people from knowing or wanting, and those who know from daring to act, the sage governs them all. Su Chai says, bestowing honors embarrasses those who don't receive them to the point where they fight for them. Prizing treasures pains those who don't possess them to the point where they steal them. Displaying attractions distresses those who don't enjoy them to the point where they cause trouble. If people aren't shown these things, they won't know what to want and will cease wanting. Wang Chen says sages empty the mind of reasoning and delusion. They fill the stomach with loyalty and honesty. They weaken the will with humility and compliance. And they strengthen the bones with what people already have within themselves. Wang Pai says bones don't know how to make trouble. It's the will that creates disorder. When the mind is empty, the will is weak. Wang Piang says an empty mind means no distinctions. A full stomach means no desires. A weak will means no external plans. Strong bones means standing on one's own and remaining unmoved by outside forces. By bestowing no honors, sages keep people from knowing. Prizing no treasures, they keep people from wanting. Lu Nyangshi says the mind knows and chooses while the stomach doesn't know but simply contains. The will wants and moves, but bones don't want, but simply stand there. Sages empty what knows and fill what doesn't know. They weaken what wants and strengthen what doesn't want. Jensen says, they empty the mind and calm the breath. They concentrate their essence and strengthen the spirit. Huang Yuan, she says, sages purify their ears and eyes, put an end to dispassion and selfishness, embrace the one and empty the mind. An empty mind forms the basis for transmuting cinnabar by enabling us to use our yang breath to transform our yin essence. A full stomach represents our final form, in which our yang breath gradually and completely replaces our yin essence. Wei Yuan says, the reason the world is in order is because of action. Action comes from desire, and desire comes from knowledge. Sages don't talk about things that can be known or display things that can be desired. This is how they bring order to the world. Li Qing says this verse describes how sages cultivate themselves in order to transform others. The Tao is so empty, those who use it never become full again, and so deep as if it were the ancestor of us all. It dulls our edges, unties our tangles, softens our light, and merges our dust. It's so clear as if it were present. I wonder whose child it is. It seems it was here before tea. Wang Anshi says the Tao possesses form and function. Its form is the original breath that doesn't move. Its function is the empty breath that alternates between heaven and earth. Empty means empty like a bowl. The Tao is essentially empty. The people who use it should be empty too. To be full is contrary to the Tao. Deep means what cannot be measured. Ancestor means one who unites a lineage, just as the Tao unites all things, as if suggests a reluctance to compare. The ancient masters of the way had no ambition, hence they dulled their edges and did not insist on anything. They had no fear, hence they untied every tangle and avoided nothing. They did not care about beauty, hence they softened their light and forgot about themselves. They did not hate ugliness, hence they merged with the dust and did not abandon others. By taking advantage of edges, we create conflicts with others. By shining bright lights, we illuminate their dust. Grinding down edges makes conflicts disappear. Dimming the light merges dust and with darkness. A person who can adjust their light to that of the crowd and merge with the dust of the world is like a magic mushroom among ordinary plants. You can't see it, but it makes everything smell better. The Tao is invisible, hence Lao Tzu calls it clear. The Shuwan says Chan clear means unseen. Lu Nengshi says clear describes what is deep, what seems to be present and yet not present, what seems to be not present and yet not present. Liao Chang says, if it's empty, it's a deep. If it's deep, it's clear. The Tao comes from nothing, hence the Tao is the child of nothing. Li says Tai is the Lord of creation. All of creation comes from after Tai, except the Tao, which comes before it. But the nature of the Tao is to yield, hence Lao Tzu does not insist it came before, thus he says it seems. Zhen Chiyu says, in ancient times no one denied the existence of Tai and no one called his supremacy into doubt. Lao Tzu, however, says the Tao is the ancestor of us all, which presumably included Tai as well. Heaven and earth are heartless, treating creatures like straw dogs. Sages are heartless too. They treat people like straw dogs. Between heaven and earth, howl like a bellows, empty but inexhaustible. Each stroke produces more, talking only wastes it. Better to protect what's inside. Hushi says Lao Tzu's statement that heaven and earth are heartless undercuts the ancient belief that heaven and humankind were of the same lineage and thereby created the basis for natural philosophy. Sucha says, heaven and earth aren't partial. They don't kill living things out of cruelty or give them birth of kindness. We do the same when we make straw dogs to use in sacrifices. We dress them up and put them on the altar, but not because we love them. When the ceremony is over, we throw them into the street, but not because we hate them. This is how sages treat the people. Huai Nanzi says, when we make straw dogs or clay dragons, we paint them yellow and blue, decorate them with brocade, and tie red ribbons around them. The shaman puts on his black robe, and the Lord puts on his ceremonial hat to usher them in and to see them off. But once they've been used, they are nothing but clay and straw. Wu Cheng says straw dogs were used in praying for rain, and these particular bellows were used in metallurgy. Wang Piang says a bellows is empty so that it can respond. Something moves and it responds. It responds but retains nothing, like heaven and earth in regard to the 10,000 things or sages in regard to the people. It responds with what fits, if it isn't tied to the present or attached to the past. The Tao has no substance or dimension, yet it works the breath of emptiness between heaven and earth and gives birth to the 10,000 things. The Tao cannot be talked about, yet we dismiss it as heartless. It cannot be named, yet we liken it to a bellows. Those who understand get the meaning and forget the words. Those who don't understand fail to see the truth and chatter away in vain. When the main path has many side trails, sheep lose their way. When hearing leads in many directions, students waste their lives in study. Whatever the mouth opens and the tongue moves, disaster is close behind. Better to guard your inner virtue, nurture your vital essence, protect your spirit, treasure your breath, and avoid talking too much. Sung Cheng Sing says, if our mouth doesn't talk too much, our spirit stays in our heart. If our ears don't hear too much, our essence stays in our genitals. In the course of time, essence becomes breath. Breath becomes spirit, and spirit returns to emptiness. The valley spirit that doesn't die, we call the dark womb. The dark womb's mouth, we call the source of heaven and earth. As elusive as gossamer silk, and yet it can't be exhausted. The s1-9 Ching says the valley spirit of the morning light is a black and yellow, 8-footed, 8-tailed, 8-headed animal with a human face. The s1-9 Ching's valley spirit is the moon, which runs ahead of the sun during the last 8 days of its 30-day cycle, lags behind during the first 8 days, and faces the sun during its 8 days of glory. For the remaining days of the month, it's too close to the sun to be visible. Like many other cultures, this ancient Chinese viewed the moon as the embodiment of the female element of creation. Wang Pai says, the valley is what is in the middle, what contains nothing, no form, no shadow, no obstruction. It occupies the lowest point, remains motionless, and does not decay. All things depend on it for their development, but no one sees its shape. Yen Fu says, because it is empty, we call it a valley. Because there is no limit to its responsiveness, we call it a spirit. Because it is inexhaustible, we say it doesn't die. These three are the virtues of the Tao. Su Chai says, a valley is empty but has form. A valley spirit is empty but has no form. What is empty and has no form is not alive, so how can it die? Valley spirit refers to its virtue, dark womb refers to its capacity. This womb gives birth to the 10,000 things, and we call it dark because we see it give birth, but not how it gives birth. Sui Hui says the words Lao Tzu chooses are often determined by the demands of rhyme and should not be restricted to their primary meaning. Thus, pian, female animal, can also be read pian, womb. The valley is what nourishes. Those able to nourish their spirit do not die. Spirit means the spirits of the 5 organs, the gallbladder, the heart, the kidneys, and the spleen. When these 5 are injured, the 5 spirits leave. Dark refers to heaven. In a person, this means the nose, which links us with heaven. Womb refers to earth. In a person, this means the mouth, which links us with earth. The breath that passes through our nose and mouth should be finer than gossamer silk and barely noticeable, as if it were actually present. It should be relaxed and never strained or exhausted. The empty valley is where spirits dwell, where breath isn't exhausted. Who relaxes their breath increases their vitality. Who strains their breath soon expires. Tai Cheng says that purposeful action leads to exhaustion. The Tao is empty and acts without purpose, hence it can't be exhausted. Sung Cheng Sing says the valley spirit, the dark womb, the source of heaven and earth, all act without acting. That we don't see them doesn't mean they don't exist. Liei Chung says it's like the silk of a silkworm or the web of a spider, hard to distinguish and hard to grab. But then it isn't humankind who uses it, only the spirit can use it. Du Tao Te Ching says this verse also appears in Lao Tzu, where it is attributed to the Yellow Emperor instead of Lao Tzu. Lao Tzu frequently incorporates passages from ancient texts. We see their traces in "thus the sage proclaims," or hence the ancients say. Thus Confucius said, "I don't create, I only relate." Lao Tzu says, "What creates life is not itself alive." Heaven is eternal and earth is immortal. The reason they are eternal and immortal is because they don't live for themselves. Hence they can live forever. Sages therefore pull themselves back and end up in front, put themselves outside and end up safe. It is not because of their selflessness. Whatever they seek, they find. Chu Chen Chess says the line "heaven is eternal and earth is immortal," what apparently an old saying which Lao Tzu quotes in order to explain its significance. Cheng Tzu says heaven refers to the point between the eyebrows, earth refers to the point just below the navel. Le Ching says heaven stands for the movement of time, earth represents the transformation of form. Heaven and earth have their origin in the dark womb, and the essence of the dark womb is the valley spirit that doesn't die, because it doesn't die. It isn't born. Only what isn't born can give birth to the living, and because it doesn't give birth to itself, it can live forever. Tao Te Ching says what is not alive is the basis for life. By equating life and death, we are no longer burdened by life and death. By abandoning bodily form, we are no longer hindered by bodily form. Wu Cheng says to pull oneself back means to be humble, and not to try to be in front of others. To put oneself outside means to be content and not to try to add to one's life. To find what one seeks means to be in front and safe. Sung Cheng Sing says, heaven and earth help creatures fulfill their needs by not having any needs of their own. Can sages do otherwise? By following the way of heaven and earth, sages are revered by all and harmed by none. Hence they too live long. Zhen Fa Zhong says sages do not purposely seek long life, but achieve it through selflessness. Cheng Che says heaven and earth and humankind share the same origin. Why doesn't humankind share the immortality? Because heaven and earth are not aware they are a heaven and earth. Only humankind is self-aware. And being self-aware, there is nothing humans won't do to stay alive. But the more they care for their life, the more pain their life becomes. The more they nourish the body, the sicker they becomes. People who have not thought this out say the followers of Lao Tzu are afraid of death and only interested in immortality. But this is getting it backward. Ho Sheng Kung says the reason heaven and earth alone are eternal and immortal is because they are content and give without expecting a reward, unlike humankind who never stops chasing profit and fighting over possessions. Wangpi says those who live for themselves fight with others. Those who don't live for themselves are the refuge of others. Suche says if heaven and earth fought with others over life, they would be the same as others. And if sages fought with others over profit, they would be the same as them. What? Would that not be a great shame? Wang Piang says, although sages are sages, they look the same as others. But because they embody the way of heaven and don't fight, they alone differ from everyone else. Sages are selfless because they no longer have a self. Lu Tongpin says the only thing sages seek is virtue. The best are like water, bringing help to all, without competing. Choosing what others avoid, they thus approach the Tao, dwelling with earth, thinking with depth, helping with kindness, speaking with honesty, governing with peace, working with skill, and moving with time, and because they don't compete, they aren't maligned. Wu Cheng says, among those who follow the Tao, the best are like water, content to be lower and thus free of blame. Most people hate being lower and compete to be higher, but when people compete, someone is maligned. Li Hongfu says, how do we know the best don't compete? Everyone else chooses nobility. They alone choose humility. Everyone else chooses the pure. They alone choose the base. What they choose is what everyone else hates. Who is going to compete with them? Guanzi says, water is the source of creation, the ancestor of all living things. It's the bloodstream of earth. Huang Yuancha says, Mencius says, people cannot live without water and fire. In terms of cultivation, when fire warms water, pure yang arises. When water cools fire, sweet dew appears. Wang Ping says, water is the chief of the 5 elements. It comes from space which is not that far from the Tao. Wang Pai says, the Tao does not exist, but water does. Hence it only approaches the Tao. Ho Sheng Kung says the best people have a nature like that of water. They're like mist or dew in the sky, like a stream or a spring on land. Most people hate moist or muddy places, places where water alone dwells. The nature of water is like the Tao, empty, clear, and deep. As water empties, it gives life to others. It reflects without becoming impure. And there is nothing it cannot wash clean. Water can take any shape. It is never out of touch with the seasons. How could anyone malign something with such qualities as this? Sung Cheng Sing says, those who free themselves from care stay low and avoid heights. Those whose minds are empty can plumb the depths. Those who help others without expecting any reward are truly kind. Those whose mouths agree with their minds speak the truth. Those who make demands of themselves as well as others establish peace. Those who can change as conditions change work with skill. Those who act when it is time to act and rest when it is time to rest move with time. Li Zhong says water has no purpose of its own. Those who can remain empty and not compete with others follow the natural way. Yan Zhen says, if a ruler embodies this and uses this in his government, his virtue is most wonderful. How could he be maligned? Han Fai says, if a drowning man drinks it, he dies. If a thirsty man drinks it, he lives. Given Lao Tzu's usual disdain for social virtues, some commentators have trouble accepting the standard reading of Zen kindness in line 8. For those in search of an alternative, the Fu Yi and Qinglong editions have Zen others, while Ma Wang Tuai Ha Tian Heaven and Ma Wang Tuai A compresses lines 8 and 9, helping with honesty. This is not present in the quotient text, yet it remains one of the Tao Te Ching's most quoted verses. Alright, we'll end it there. The next recording will start on Chapter 9, page 18 of Lao Tzu's Tao Te Ching, translated by Red Pine with selected commentaries from the past 2,000 years.